There is one other thing. We've been talking about, maybe the potential for people to be kind of persecuted. That's why they're in the closet as far as being a gun owner is concerned. Kind of look no further. Look at that logo on your chest and look at the logo on mine. The one of the main responsibilities that we have as CRPA is protecting people's rights. We work with a really good law firm, and if your rights are taken away as an individual, that's no different than us saying a population's rights are being taken away, because that population can be taken down to the individual. So it's almost better to stand up and say something. And if you become persecuted, look to groups like CRPA to help you out. There are definitely lots of different levels of persecution, whether it's somebody saying something mean to you, all the way up to DOJ coming to your house to take your firearms. But at the end of the day, CRPA can offer help there. It's worth making a political statement. And is it really even a political statement?
No, but I think one of the things that each of you out there who work with us, and I'm speaking to you as an individual, have to realize we've been doing this for years. And, some of the most egregious things, horrific things that we could break down for you is, in today's age, somebody wears a shirt that has some level of protest from, I support Che Guevara, and all the way to, insert any 3 or 4 initialed organization that's out there, things of that ilk. And when a group of people say, oh, that's inappropriate for you to wear that logo, that shirt, that whatever, the media responds, people respond, and it usually gets resolved that the youth or person can wear it. And yet you need to realize the same thing happens with us. While I've been working for CRPA, we've had a couple different individuals. One that I notably remember was in Orange County and, lived in a very conservative area of the county. She wore a NRA shirt. There was a competition shirt. Didn't say anything wrong on it. And her school principal was like, no, the school security, they tried to suspend her. I think they actually initially did suspend her. We got involved. So did NRA and a couple other organizations. And within less than 24 hours, turned it around, got it stopped. The security guard, the principal, all got backhanded pretty heavily by the school board. A lot of times we're able to resolve those issues so quick that it never even makes it in the media. Many times the media, as you know, chooses not to put it in the media. But the point is, that's a form of persecution when you were talking about it. Like when you take a youth in front of their school and say you're being suspended for exercising your First Amendment right of freedom of speech, supporting your Second Amendment right, that's persecution.
Yeah, and I understand, as an adult, it is reasonable to be fearful of somebody taking your job because of something that you believe in. But the question that I would kind of pose is, then why do you believe in it? Why would you go to one group and say the Second Amendment is so important, but not reflect that in the other half of your life? And I think that we get caught in this conundrum of what is actually important to us as opposed to what is important overall. And I think where you get those people who are on the front lines, both of those things become the same thing. And it's a tough line to draw. Your job is your livelihood, and cancel culture is real.
But don't you think part of this is also that, like you and I will talk like we are here today with all of you, and when we're doing this, we're trying to break down scenarios. And I think giving people the concept of how this actually plays out is helpful in the sense that if you're going to talk to somebody about, say, wearing a t-shirt, just continuing that example, we have t-shirts that have everything. I don't care what your political take, religious take, cultural take is. There are shirts that no matter where you wear them, you're going to offend somebody. What I find interesting is our people, like yourselves out there, many of you, Well, when somebody wears a shoot that says, hunting tastes good, or, my first shot is always my best shot, or something like that, that it's not overly aggressive, but I don't see the same like public outrage or outcries when it has a sexual innuendo on it, when it has a political innuendo going about, or it's one-sided if it is. And it's like, we need to start standing up and pointing out, going, wait a second, if it's okay for people that work at this workplace, like a Google or something, or people who go to this high school to wear that shirt and that shirt and that shirt that could all be taken as offensive, then this shirt should be. Now, granted, if it's like has anything to do with violence or something against somebody, personally, I'd probably say it's probably not appropriate, especially in a school setting. But if it's not doing that, like if you're going to allow this, you better allow that. You can't be selective in which speech you want to go after.
Well, yeah, and at the very least, it's going to further the conversation. I mean, if you're going to wear something like that and somebody's going to deem it not fit for a specific place, at least you're having the conversation. And having that conversation ultimately can be healthy and can have some positive consequences as far as maybe changing somebody's mind. I'll tell you, though, in my experience, when I wear political stuff, I actually end up making more friends than enemies. And again, it's just like we were talking about earlier. It's kind of that icebreaker mentality. Once somebody sees something else kind of confirming their own beliefs, they're much more likely to come up to you with a smile. I mean, sure, I get scoffed at all the time, but at the end of the day, the friends that I make end up becoming a lot more valuable in our conquest or our fight for these political rights than any individual who just kind of scoffs and walks away.
Well, I think also you can't allow people to have the name it and claim it philosophy when they're being adversarial. And what I mean by that is, and this ranges from even outside of our Second Amendment community, but, as you know, I'm a pretty hardcore baseball and hockey fan. Like, not that I don't like basketball and I'm a diehard football fan, but it's like amazing to me that there are actually schools and groups that are like, oh, you can't wear that hat because it's a certain color. I'm an Angels fan. Like, the hat comes in two colors, white or red, like away or home. I'll say it. I'm sorry, Kevin. I'm a Kings fan.
That is an offense.
Yeah, I know. But it's like, again, just because I'm an LA Kings fan, I mean, I've been an LA Kings fan for decades when we absolutely were the bottom of the thing. I'm a fan of Weatherby Rifles. I'm a fan of Glock. I mean, I should be able to wear a hat representing any of those things without feeling like, oh, I can't wear that because I'm going lumber shopping. No, that should not be an issue. And when it becomes an issue, we should be standing side by side saying, no, you don't get to say because you woke up this morning and you're Amy Schumer, the international orange, the sign of hunting for well over a century and a half, all of a sudden becomes the anti-gun color. What? You're a comedian. That was a bad joke. Shut up. Like, that was my attitude that day.
Well, just about all of her jokes are bad. But yeah, I mean, normally, those sorts of things are never influenced by the thing or the color itself.
Right.
They're always influenced by something external, and it just creates, this ideology within somebody's mind of, you're wearing a specific color, they wore a specific color, so I am now going to mentally group you with them. And most of the time, it's just dead wrong. I think even within the Second Amendment community, we tend to do that with each other. You're a hunter. Okay, well, I mean, I shoot competitively, so what you do doesn't necessarily have to do with what I do, but I think kind of to what you're saying, we do need to stand together because at the end of the day, an attack on one is an attack on all.
Yeah.
And believe me, Mr. Hunter, because you are, if they come after competitive shooting and they come after youth programs and they succeed, they're not going to stop.
No.
No, and
And
before
same thing, the opposite direction.
Sure. And before long, when, again, since I'm talking to you, Mr. Hunter, before long, when hunting is the only thing left unconquered, they're not just going to say, oh, well, we like you, Mr. Hunter. No, they're not. They're going to come and they're going to take your stuff too. So I think standing together while we can recognize each other as a diverse community seems more important now than it can ever be down the road when, they've taken fractions of us out at a time.
And I think this comes down to a more global argument within the American culture, and that was there was a time, and it's never been perfect, and I'd be the first one to admit that, so I am going on record saying it, but Americans have done things to each other within our country that have not been correct, and I think we can all agree to that. But we've never allowed people from the outside to come in and critique. We've always kind of had that position of, I can tell you, I think you're kind of messed up this way. But if somebody from, and then insert any of 170 different countries comes in and says, oh, you're bad, it's like, wait, what'd you say? We're Americans. Like, we stand shoulder to shoulder. I think the same thing has to happen even within the Second Amendment community. Like you're saying, is that, each of you may not understand that, hunters have helped keep competitive firearms in play when people tried legislatively to remove it. Vice versa, it's went the other way too. The right to protect yourself, has been all over, as you know, in the legislation because they try to take each of us out. And when you allow that to happen, it has devastating things that go beyond the community. And the one that I was just at a conference we're talking about was a few years ago, we lost hounds in bear hunting. And I know for a lot of people in our community, they're like, okay, so? And, at face value, you're like, well, it doesn't stop people from having hounds if they like them. It just means they can't do this one activity. But let's look what's happened 5 years down the road for people that don't even own firearms. We have a bear issue now in California. We're losing wildlife because we have too many bears. We have animals starving to death, animals with disease, a whole bunch of things because the entire balance has been thrown out because of one act that was made to look like it was this big deal. And now, you even talk to the departments across the country and they're like, California was the stupidest when they did that. And yet, on paper, it sounded to a lot of people like, oh, that's a good idea. And we had a lot of people in our community that I remember going to talk to them like, it doesn't affect me. I had hunters, Kevin. We don't even have to take it out hunting. I had duck guys going, well, I don't use hounds. Like, as long as I ain't touching my retriever, I'm good, and now they're like, oh, wait, that was a mistake, and it's harder to always repair something like that once it's been removed. It's hard to get something back. And so, I think we need to change people's mindsets. This isn't like when you were a kid and you did something wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. So a lot of times what the legislature does is they play parent, but you actually didn't do anything wrong. And they said, not only on restriction, but there'll be no car in the driveway, ever. Try to get a car after mom and dad have removed all cars from the neighborhood.
Yeah, not going to happen. And I think, another consequence of that, hasn't there also been legislation restricting, what was it, dog breed?
Yeah, dog breeds. It just continued. And so those of you out there that said, oh, this won't impact me, now they're coming for different dog breeds. Now they're trying to say your dog can't be in the field at a certain time. And for those who do competitive shooting, how's that any different than the ammunition restrictions? Right. It's when ammunition restrictions came down on hunting, didn't hear a whole lot from the competitive shooting community. Oh, but the moment you can only buy a box of ammo with a $19 charge every time to it. Now all of a sudden they're like, hey, where's the hunters? And the hunters are like, well, where were you? And we gotta quit that. We just have to be unified and see it as you throw a stone at any window, door, any part of the front lawn of the 2A community, it's at all of us.
Well, thankfully, and I think step one here is to identify your friends and identify your ideology, really. But over the last 6 or 7 years, people have been more politically engaged and active as ever. I think that helps with rule number 1, but what you're saying is rule number 2 is just answer the call. When your friends are in trouble, there shouldn't be any question as to whether or not it affects you, because ultimately what we've seen is down the line it will affect you. So, when that call comes, it's time for all of us to stand up and answer it within the Second Amendment community. And, just because I'm not a hunter doesn't mean I'm not going to fight for hunting rights, because when the hunting rights go away, they're coming after all the other rights too. And I think that that's important. There's lots of positives and negatives in the California legislature, but what's always positive? A like on this video. So be sure and like, share, and subscribe. Make sure and hit that little bell so that you can stay tuned for all of our future videos. You can also check us out on Facebook and at crpa.org. If you're looking for up-to-date legislature notes and things that are going on in the courts, the website and these videos are a great place to find it. So be sure and follow us, and we'll see you next time.